What's the outlook for winter? We're joined by Vally Padayachee. He's the chairman of the management committee on the NRS Association of South Africa and former executive manager of Eskom. Mr. Padayachee, thank you very much for your time. I just want to start with, this first question. South Africans last week were told by many experts that in fact we were not on stage 6 load shedding, we were on 7 and 8. And Eskom itself tweeting that it had to shed 7,000 megawatts of power. And that is an admission, isn't it, from Eskom, that we were on a higher stage than stage 6, because they always explain to us that if it's stage 1, they shed 1,000 megawatts. If it's stage 2, 2,000 megawatts, etc. So if you're going to announce on Twitter that you have to shed 7,000, but in the same breath you're telling us we're on stage 6, what really is going on?
Good afternoon, Ms. Ego, and a very good afternoon to your viewers as well, and thank you very much for inviting me. No, I think your rationale, as you explained it, is not correct. Let me explain the rationale for that situation that you just put on, the question you put on to me. The official status is that it was stage 6 that was declared, and not what the media is reporting as stage 8 in reality. Now let me explain that very, very carefully. And I could talk from an NRS perspective, and as you know, we regulate load shedding through NRS 048 Part 9. But let me explain that situation so that hopefully once and for all it clears the uncertainty. Before national control or the system operator declares a load shedding stage, they go through a number of interventions with a view to, at high level, to mitigate or to balance the supply and demand. And if, for example, at the initial exercise, they come up with a 7,000 megawatts deficiency within national control and the system operator, then they would try and bring in other interventions to try and close that gap. So even at a high level, although there was 7,200 megawatts offloaded, I'm using simple language, from the grid, national control would have, in this case, brought on through load curtailment and through the critical load interventions, they would have offloaded a further 1,250 megawatts. And then the final deficiency, if I can put it in those words, would have been around about 6,000 megawatts. And then national control, system operator, would have issued that instruction countrywide to all the distribution control centers and the municipal control centers to load shed stage 6, which is 6,000 megawatts. So officially, it is stage 6. But yes, admittedly, if you ask the question, and I've said this before, if you ask the question if 7,250 megawatts was offloaded from the grid, yes. And I think Eskom has made that clear, national control has made that clear. And that's allowed for by the NRS Association. Vis-a-vis, very quickly, we allow every utility, including Eskom, to take any technical mitigation circumstances to prevent the national grid from collapsing. And load curtailment, etc., is part of that.
In there, that's where I want to, that's where I want to talk to you as an expert there and somebody who's worked at Eskom. Is it a possibility that the grid will collapse? I mean, I know we've been told numerous times that the reason we are put on load shedding is to prevent the grid from collapsing, but we're back to the stage where every single day there's a unit that is tripping at every power station.
No, I don't believe, maybe as an expert opinion, I don't believe, and using my NRS Act, the NRS 048 Part 9, that we will collapse the grid, even during winter. because, and I must bring this in, Maseko, NRS 048 Part 9, which is a code of practice that regulates load shedding, edition 3, we've done a lot of work there that will assist national control and the system operator and the control rooms of the different community utilities to mitigate going into a blackout. But what I can tell you now as a professional and an NRS, we cannot give you a guarantee now, given the status of the Eskom generation infrastructure and the grid, that we wouldn't go to advanced levels of load shedding vis-a-vis beyond stage 6 or beyond stage 8. So that I can't guarantee you, and that's from a technical professional view, but shared by other people, including the minister and by Eskom.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going through 10 hours of load shedding a day at stage 6, that means if you're saying we're going to go over stage 8, people and businesses are probably going to have less than 8 hours in a day to do anything. But let me ask you just one last question, and very quickly from you, in terms of what we've heard this week around Eskom. You know, the National Treasury telling Parliament that Eskom will have to use the money that has been given by government to start fixing its ailing infrastructure. Is this a possibility, looking at, or rather they have to use the tariff increase from customers to fix their infrastructure? But in South Africa, we have an issue where municipalities are not paying Eskom. So is it possible for them to actually use this to fix the exact infrastructure that is giving us a problem today?
Yes, I think in whichever way you look at it, from whichever sources that Eskom would get the capital to do maintenance, the fact of the matter, technically, the Eskom fleet, the coal-fired fleet, has to be maintained because, Maseko, we need to get to an energy availability factor of 75% ASAP. Because if we do not get to that energy availability factor, then we will need more than what the energy crisis plan is calling for, 6,000 megawatts. And if we don't do that, then the risk of not a blackout, but the risk of advanced stages of load shedding is still there. And actually, on that basis, because the infrastructure is not at a reasonable level now, I'm making the statement that we cannot guarantee you that that the system wouldn't go beyond stage 6 load shedding, let alone stage 8.
All right. All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Padayachee. There are some experts who feel that for some years, Eskom concentrated too much on IPPs and forgot about the fact that they need to maintain infrastructure. And that's how we found ourselves where generating units are tripping every single day. That was Vally Padayachee, the chairman of the management committee of the NRS Association of South Africa and the former executive manager at Eskom.